Hello. I'm sorry, I'm trying to sort out my video that I want to do with this because I wasn't able to get it ready. I was having issues with my camera and microphone not linking up. So please let me know that you can hear me because I have my proper mic with me today. So yeah, it'd be good to know that I can be heard. Let me get wrong buttons. Let me get this video up. How's your day been? What are you drinking? I have some wine. Oops, because I've just had my dinner. It is 7 p.m. in the UK. Trying to find this video. It's crazy because I've had like all day, but this past couple of hours has like really flown by. I did my dinner for the week. Did a really nice chicken curry that was like pre-marinated chicken with coconut and chili. It's really, really nice. That then I put with that then I cooked with some soups that I brought that were on offer. That's the one that I want. That were on offer. And yeah, they were like spiced parsnip and spice. Ooh. I'll remove that just for the moment. Spiced parsnip and butternut squash with chili, which was really, really nice. Oh, ice cream. Oh, that's what I'm going to get, hopefully, in between this stream and the craft pre-show with Chad. So yeah, that will be really fun. So anyone that's comes across this as a new video channel, I also do on Monday evenings, which is sort of like kind of late afternoons for the US, a crafting pre-show, which is why I've got my painting here, with a creator from SBTV, Nevering, as I am, for the Church of Scientology. Not that we're going to get into that here, but yeah, it's just like really fun doing some crafts, chatting before Aaron AA Wrong does his main show on a Monday with multiple creators. So yeah, it's really fun. But yeah, I'm jealous. What kind of ice cream have you got? I've got vanilla and sweet salted caramel to have after this, hopefully. So yeah, looking forward to that with some berries as well. I've got some blackberries that I picked from the garden. Right, so I will kind of like put chapters in this video for anyone that watches in the replay crew. As Emily D. Baker says, we love you. Because I'm always replay crew on anything that I watch on YouTube. Also, do forgive me. I need to remember to look up to my actual camera and not down to my computer. And yeah, it's interesting to get used to. Oh, banana and chocolate. Love banana, but chocolate, I'm like, I have to be. It's not even like time of the month time. It's just like I just get a point in a month every blue moon, you know, like sort of when I'm up for having chocolate. I'm not sort of the hugest fan. I'll have it if it's there, but also I'm just like when I'm fancying it. then I have to have like loads. I'll have like a whole massive bar on one of those. Like I'll just like finish the whole bar and then that's me done for like 6 weeks kind of thing. Right, wonderful. So without further ado, I will start this video.
Today we're going to be learning how to thread up.
Oh no, that's my voiceover one. How do I do it without this? Oh, there we go, without the sound on. I thought I had one of those that didn't have the sound, so that's fine. Then maybe I didn't quite need to do this with this one, but it's cool. So yeah, so I'm going to be voicing and talking you through the different elements. Now I'm hoping that this is the one that I've edited with some extra little clips. Yeah, I'm going to be voicing through how we thread up, a sewing machine. Oh, vegan version, lovely. Yeah, how to thread up a sewing machine, and yeah, and then we'll go from there, and then sort of any questions can be answered at the end, and yeah, and that's cool. So let's get on with it. And it's kind of a slow version so that people can like do the actions whilst like on their machine whilst they're watching. So basically, what I've got in my hand is a spool of thread. With said spool, you can either place it through a holder at the very top of the machine, which I should show in a bit where it goes, or you kind of put it at a stand-up one that sort of goes on top, which I don't believe I show, but I can do another one where I show that as well. So that is like a little cap that you sort of put on the end that just holds that spool on that top holder in place. From there, and it, yeah, as I actioned, stops it from falling off. Then with the bobbing, yes, I'm going too far ahead of myself. So yeah, so with the bobbing, as shown, you would clip it into that little holder and then click it back to when you get one that wants to be rethreaded. So there you go, an empty one. And I just wind round the thread about sort of like 5 or so times, which I just sort of like kind of, I do it that many times just because I find it holds it on there better round the spool. So then that part is where you sort of anchor the thread around to stop it from tangling up or anything. Yeah, so I thread it around about sort of like 5 times just to really secure it in place, because as soon as I'm like, right, that's the way that it spins, a bit like toilet water, as soon as you're like, right, that's the way it spins, it then will do it back the other way. So that is what I do there. That is why I do that, basically. So then once you've threaded up, sort of made your bobbing up with the correct thread that you want, you will then follow around the arrows, as I will show in a sec. Here we go. So your machine will have arrows that shows you exactly where you want to put that thread. As you go down the machine, you'll then come round, back up, and then I'm going to show you. So that metal piece that is sticking up, there you go, this is the one that I've edited. So yeah, so that is controlled by the wheel at the end, as I'm showing, and then also controls the needle. So you want to make sure that that metal part is stuck up. And let me just pause it there, and I'm actually going to go back to, where I showed it. Oh, it's very hard to move it along. Oh, sorry about this. Come on. It was showing that I was a lot further along in this video than what I clearly am. Where are we? Come on. Oh, right, there we go. That's what I wanted. So, pause there. Right, so if you can see my little mouse, this metal piece, that is what you're looking for. That should be up in the air, outside of the machine, and that is what you put your thread around. It will then kind of sort of pull in place, and you just go around in a loop. Oops, realizing that my finger isn't in the best position. Yeah, so you go around that, and it will sort of hook into a little hole, and then you stop, and then you'll sort of carry on down. Yeah, so then you'll go down from there, and that will then show, that will then sort of take it back down to the needle. Right, there we go. Yeah, so you can see it again there. And then you go back up. Oh. Suddenly losing my voice. So you can see that with the needle. It's all controlled from that wheel. So if you ever also get a point when you're sewing top tip, and like you want to hit a specific point, say like you're doing a corner or something, or just sort of like to get like closer to a end of a hem or something, or even if it's a point where the machine is just kind of struggling, like there's too much material, always use that wheel at the end just to help you, so then you can sort of have more control over the machine, because often with a foot you can go off really fast, so that just allows you to do a stitch at a time. Yeah, so you just make sure that it's in that loop. Oh, here we go. In there, you can just see that. And then you carry on down from there. And then my machine has like 2 hooks. So one at the very top as shown, and then one at the top of the, just where the needle is. So the one at the top where the needle is always there. The extra first one is like an added extra if you have that. Then we come to the needle part. So I always say to people when I'm teaching them in person to put a finger behind the needle. That way then you'll be able to see where the hole is. Yeah, and then it's easy to get it through now. It's taking a bit of trouble in this video because I'm doing it from a funny angle. But yeah, so putting that finger behind the needle will allow you to find where that hole is. Try to keep your machine off when you're doing that as well. or at least your pedal away from your foot. I'm just going to pause that there. Oh gosh, maybe not with that face. Yeah, so then you, by doing that, then you can see where that hole is, and then you're able to poke it through a lot better. Also, using some tweezers to do it is really good as well, because sometimes sort of like kind of your fingers can be a bit sort of big and bulky to sort of see where exactly you're putting it. Other people also really like the automatic needle threader. I don't always get on with them personally, so I don't really use them. I've tried, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, like when I'm showing people in person. But yeah, so it's not something that you will see me necessarily show on here, because unfortunately it doesn't actually work with me, and I just thought it's not really the best to show on a video. And your thread will go from front to back in a domestic machine. In an industrial machine, you go from left to right. And then you take the thread through the, there's usually like a slit in the foot or to the side. So you take it through that, and it will go underneath, and you just put it to the back of the machine. Now, just go back on that. So with your bobbing, you want it facing you with the, so as if I'm facing you, so the bobbing is facing you. You want the thread on the left hand side. Let me play that again. Oh no, I went past it. On the left hand side facing you, that's where you want your thread. You then hold it, and then you put it down flat into the, this is if you've got a top loading machine, so then that's where it goes. And then you have a little like bobbly bit of metal. There you go. Oh, wonderful editing and wonderful hands. So then you just sort of pass it round where that bobbin case is, and it should fit into that piece of metal that kind of just about sticks up. It's like a little bump, but it kind of has a bit of a hook inside, so that's when you put your thread around, it will then hook into that. And by yeah, so then you do that, and then you just leave that thread to one side. You don't have to worry about it anymore, as long as it's around that little hook. Now what I'm just realizing is that I should have had for this was my industrial machine one, because some domestic machines do have them. But if you have like a metal casing that then your bobbin will go into, exactly the same principle. Face the bobbin towards you, thread on the left hand side, and then place it inside, and it kind of works very much the same as the top loading, apart from the sort of bump of metal that like you want to hook your thread around will be a little opening that then you put it through that, and then it will sort of go into a bit that acts like this piece of metal that sticks up basically, and then you just sort of kind of hook it around that. So it's like sort of two bits that you kind of put your thread around on that, and you're kind of with both of them, you're looking for the point when you know that it's sort of in there secure. When you're pulling your thread, there should just be a little bit of tension. So if it isn't too much tension, then you just want to tighten that tension. There will be a screwdriver, tiny little screwdriver, screw for a tiny little screwdriver. I often use the end of a pin, to be honest, because I always lose those screwdrivers. But a tiny little screw that then you lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, to sort of like loosen or tighten how you want your tension to be, depending on the thread type. Now, once you've with a bobbin in particular, you want to sorry, I'm just realising that I'm probably talking quite fast, so I apologise. But with a bobbing thread, whatever thread you're going to use for a bobbing, you want to use a sew-all thread. Now, I'm the ethical tailor, so I will tell you to use a natural fibre thread. But as long as it's a sew-all thread, then it's fine. But I don't, you know, sort of, if you want to use a polyester one, if you already have one, you know, don't go throwing out all your threads. I'm not about that. But I will say that then when you want to buy a new one, try and buy a natural thread one, natural cloth, natural yarn thread, because then that will save the planet. No, but it will, you know, it lessens our impact on the planet, basically. That's what I'm about. Whereas obviously polyester is made from oil. If you didn't know, I should do another stream about sort of like cloth and yarns and where it all comes from, fibres. But yeah, so that, yes, polyester comes from oil, and it is a plastic basically. So, you know, kind of the more that you, and I won't go into this too much, but the more that you mix the different fibres, the harder it is, in particular if you're mixing naturals and synthetics, or all synthetics. If you're mixing, then it's harder to, one, recycle, and two, if it's not natural, then those bits will decompost a lot slower. So, you know, sort of by doing things in natural fibres, it then allows you that literally when they're falling apart, that then you can put them in your compost bin, no matter what that fibre is, as long as it is natural. Then yeah, then you can sort of do that. So yeah, so it's good to have an understanding of where your fibres come from, basically. Right, sorry, that's that little little rant over, but I do kind of, it's a hard one to sort of convey to people, is the you know, sort of in the grand scheme of things, kind of making garments is amazing, and I'm all for sort of teaching people how to sort of do that, and kind of upskilling people. But if you're not going to think about what you are making from, then, you know, kind of that's something that I would sort of encourage people to look more into. And yeah, and kind of sort of cost is another side of it, which is why I'd never say to people to get rid of what you have. You know, upcycle of garments that you've got if you can't get any cloth. You know, there's a lot of clothes already in the world that we can sort of do stuff with. And yeah, just sort of the more we can not contribute with fast fashion, I think, is my sort of fundamental goal of things. And yeah, so, and I want to, you know, sort of with that knowledge, I want to empower you to be able to make things in the best way, so that you can be proud of yourself. Also, mostly with it being natural, it will actually last for a lot longer. It's surprising how much synthetics, as much as they will kind of be around forever, the kind of quality, you know, like colours and sort of whether it bobbles or not, you know, kind of sort of can wear a lot more in a way. So yeah. I'm just going to put this one up. Oh no, I double tapped myself. Yes, thank you, Matri Donegall. I think I got that right. Matrimir Donegall, because I've listened to some other creators there. So yeah, I think that is always my thoughts on the matter. But yeah, so that's cool. Right, end of that rant. So back to what I'm showing. So I am now, so once you've put your bobbing in place, you put said thread to one side. So it will be, if you can see my mouse on the screen, then it should just sort of kind of go off to one side there. Then I am holding the top stitch thread, so you want to hold that, and then whilst you're holding that, you're going to turn your wheel at the side, and you want to turn it towards yourself, never away, because it kind of loops down differently, so you always want to come towards yourself. And as you do that, it will then pick up the thread from the bobbin, as you can see there. And then once it picks it up, you then carry it on a bit more until then you get a loop come up, a loop of thread, which will then be your bobbin thread. You pick that out, and then you have both threads together. Then with those threads, you want to pull them so then they're the same length, but you don't need them like a million miles long. You just want them the same length, so that then when you place them at the back of your machine, you then will hit the table at the back, because you basically want it longer than what the back of the machine is, basically. Lovely. And then that is that machine, that is that video. Now what I don't have for this one is a close-up of my dials, which I should have gotten, but what I will do, I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to put up a different one. Yeah, Sophia, sorry, I was thinking about it the other day, and I couldn't remember what you'd said your name, your full name was, so I apologise. What is that? Small. Don't tell me. Right, I'm going to go with this one. Oh no, that's one of the functions. I'll go with the one without music. Oops, right, so this is a totally different machine that I've got. And this one is a digital one, as you can see. This is was my pride and joy. It's currently broken and has been since lockdown, and I need to get someone to look at it. But yeah, I'd had it for like 10 years, so it had a good run. So let's go through this one. Now this one I do have the my little writing up with it as well, so you can see that. But yeah, what I say might be a bit different to what's written. Not through any reasoning other than I'm not reading the screen. Give a drink. So that is your basic straight stitch, and you would use that for all stitching that you're going to do that is like side seam orientated or a straight hem. Then that function, which you can get in most any other machines, you just will use the again, if you can see my mouse, if you use the width control, you will then be able to control where your needle goes along to one side, so it will go across your right hand side of your machine basically, unless you have a machine that has a dial that will kind of put it in all the different positionings, so from right to left. You can always use that width control. So yeah, I believe I click it, so then you'll kind of see it bounce across. Oh yeah, and that's actually good. So to just read that what I've got on the screen. Yeah, so what I'm talking about here is when you've got your cloth. So if you look at your machine, you'll see that underneath your foot, there's like a hole into the machine. So when you put your cloth underneath your foot, you don't want it sort of like too far over to one side, because otherwise your foot isn't over it enough, and then your machine will end up sort of eating it into that hole. You want to make sure that your fabric is at least to the other side of your foot basically. It doesn't need to come all the way out, but it wants to be under there completely. So then that's then why you would use that function to then move that needle across, so then you can sew a thinner hem basically. So it's like really good if you're doing a like a rolled hem, or sort of like a small folded hem basically. Sorry, I thought I did click it, but maybe not. So then, oh right, so actually I have this one wrong in what I say. This is not for twin needle, this is actually just a really thick stitch. So as it stitches, it kind of does like 2 or 3 each time, like stitches along, but they're very close together. So then you end up really with a really strong stitch. Very good if you're doing like a top stitch for a denim. But also I like to use it on the inside leg of a trouser when we are taking it in. So that's just like a really good feature for that. Now, oh right, yes, that is a really small zigzag, which is quite good if you're doing a stretch material, because it will, yeah, like make it flexible, but also make it really strong because it's really like tiny zigzags. And I'm just saying that it's again in that sort of straight down position. Then this is a normal zigzag that you would find on any machine. Again, determinable by the length of stitch and the width of stitch that you choose to use. In my in-person classes, I always get people to sew along, and then I sort of change the different lengths and widths, so then they can see how it changes, because it's good to understand that for then when you're doing other stitches that are of a similar ilk, that then you sort of understand, like by going however wide, it's sort of, that's how it will look basically. And yeah, as said, it's very good for jersey, knit, or even scuba. I tend to say though that it's very good for like the outside stitch of said things, rather than the sort of side seam, just because you'll find that when you open it up, you get like a ladder stitch that sort of goes across, which can become less strong in its nature. We will go on to show you a different stitch that is actually even better instead of an overlocker. But you can use a zigzag on along with a normal straight stitch, but not for jersey. And then this one is a zigzag, but it's like that it does like sort of lots of little stitches along it, rather than kind of one kind of sort of long one, really. Oh, here we go. So then this is the stitch. This is really good when you want to do another type of overlock stitch, and it's also very good for jersey. Very good for jersey in particular, because it gives you that straight stitch that you want for down the side seam, but it also gives you the flexibility of the zigzag going through. Yeah, so sort of that's the one that I would suggest using. It will also, like I say, be very good as an overlock stitch, because if you look inside your garment and see that overlock stitch, you will see how it looks very similar. Now when you're sewing with that, I always say to people, so you've got your side seam stitch, and then you've got your bit that then is the seam allowance, basically. So that out here is where the edge of your fabric is. You want to do this stitch in between the edge and then your original stitch, so then you can then place that like underneath your foot, basically, and get that stitch right down the middle. Then afterwards you can then trim it off, and yeah, and sort of kind of get it as close to your stitching as possible. Otherwise you can leave it there and it will just kind of fray away eventually, until then it hits that stitching that then you do with, in particular, like because of the zigzags, and then it will stop fraying. Should have had that going whilst I was talking. Lovely. Then we go on to the buttonholes. So this machine has a few different types of buttonholes. So you've got the first one, number 8, is a rectangular or squared end buttonhole. You then underneath it have a keyhole, and then number 9, I think, is just like an oval one. Now what I was also saying within that is, so they are one-step buttonholes. So if you ever see that on a machine, that is what it means. It is just looks like a buttonhole on your machine, but also when you sew it, it will just do it all in one go. Whereas you can get a 4-step buttonhole, which will be the top part that then goes across, will then do the side zigzag down, and then the bottom part across, and then the other side zigzag up. So then it becomes one whole buttonhole, but it's done in 4 different stages. They have slightly different feet. The 1-step will have a little slidey bit at the back where you put your buttoning, yeah, so then you can sort of that's how it determines rather what size of buttonhole you're doing. I always say to people to just give it a little bit extra room. Don't close it up right around the button itself, because I often find that the buttonhole, becomes quite small. So yeah, so that's just like a good thing for that. So then we're going on to these functions. So that is your length and then your width. So yes, you will need to change this when using a zigzag. Oh, and oh, there we go, yes. So can you see that? It's just going over to the right hand side, sorry, and then it's coming back the other way. I do it the other way to the left hand side. You just see that again. Right, there we go. Catching up with ourselves. So yeah, so your width goes from about from about sort of like 1.5 up to about 5, depending on the machine, and about 2.5 to 3 is a really good number. Oh, we skipped our zigzag. Right, here we go. So zigzag. You can see that just moving over to the left hand side and then back over to the right hand side. I think I'll update this with a better view of that actually, because you can't quite see it so well. But yeah, if you can sort of like see it quite well, then just let me know, it's fine. I think just because I'm watching on the smaller screen. So yes, and then your length. So yeah, so 2.5 to 3 is quite standard stitch length. But you know, sort of you'll kind of find what's best for you. A longer 4.5 to 5 is really good if you want to have a gather stitch, if you want to pre-sew something. Like obviously when you're making for yourself, you'll know that you can go so many times with, sorry, I keep hitting my mic. You can end up taking it on and off so many times and kind of making adjustments to your seams. So it's really good to use that longer stitch for those first try-ons until then you're absolutely happy with how it fits. Then trim off any excess, and sew over it again with a tighter stitch. Yeah, and it will work a little better for you. And equally, if you're doing a gather, then you want to have a longer stitch to help with that. So then here it says, so memory is M, cancel with C, because again this is a digital machine. And then we have all of the extra little functions on there. I'm not sure what I do. Yeah, it's been ages since I did this video. This is a lockdown video. Yeah, so there's various different ones. Now I don't know if I actually bring it out to show you better what those stitches are, maybe not. So then this is a needle up and down button. Again, some machines have it, some don't. The use for it would be if you're doing, say like you're sewing up a pocket and then you want it right in that corner and you want that needle to go down. It's very good for that. Otherwise, it's not a necessary thing. But also by having your needle down, it then allows you to pull up the foot and move the fabric around for you to then work on, rather than you sort of just lifting up your foot and then like your fabric goes all over the place. Having the needle down keeps it in one place. Now I'm just going to go back very quickly. So that one, oops, that was the dot. So that is your auto lock, as it says. So when you press that at the start and the end of your sewing, and it will sort of do a bunch of like up and down stitches. Now that's the equivalent, well, not quite the equivalent, but very similar to doing a back stitch, but it's kind of just on the spot and it's sort of not sitting away for itself. So yeah, so if you have that, that's kind of what that does. But again, you don't have to have it because you will always have a back stitch, and it basically does it in the same way. It's just you have it kind of in like one position rather than going kind of back a few stitches. So then this is in the back stitch, which like on this one is a button. My machine previous had a lever on the top, but then you also can have a lever down the side, and you just would, so this one you press the button. Oh shoot, sorry. Oh gosh. Oh, right, sorry about that. So yeah, so on this machine you press that and then you put your foot down on the pedal and then it will go backwards. I have another machine that is a digital one that you press on that button and then it goes backwards. And then the ones with levers, you have to hold down the lever and put your foot on the machine at the same time. So, you know, kind of they all have their own little quirks, and your machine will have its own sort of instructions that it will go through in sort of more detail for said machine. But these are kind of the fundamentals of each machine. So I'm just going to go through that again, sorry. Then we have a special, oh no, I'm not coming to it yet. We do have a special button after this. Alright, stop start button. Very fancy. So with this one, it does what it says on the label basically. You press it and it will start to sew without you even needing your foot on the pedal. You just press that button and it will go. Now what I'm about to show you, oh maybe not quite yet, I might be going on to tension first, but what you want to make sure is that so this up here basically changes your speed. So you want it right on this little small dot, because oh my god, if you do it on the fast one you're not ready, it goes very, very fast. And it becomes quite sort of disorientating for like sort of until like you really get used to it. If you ever get used to it, I never quite did, to be honest. But it will, yeah, sort of it gets quite disorientating, being that then you think that you just want to take your foot off the pedal, a bit like when you're driving an automatic car, if you get that feeling as well. I do. I'm a Capricorn, I like to be in control. But so yeah, so you actually sort of have to remind yourself that you have to press the button to stop it. So just kind of an FYI if you do come across a machine like that. They're very lovely, but yeah, you just have to be aware and not kind of go gung-ho into it basically. Oh, sorry. What I will just say is it is very handy, in particular when you're doing like the buttonhole, because at the end of the buttonhole it will then just stop itself. And it's also quite good if you're doing like a rolled hem or something, where you kind of want sort of like all hands on it, or no, actually, yeah, no, I say that. Yeah, it kind of is good for that, but yeah, maybe not the best. You do still want to have control of your foot. But if you're doing like a fancy pattern, so like this one does like sort of small letters and some patterns, so it's really good for that. If you have like one of the like embroidery rings, then yeah, then that's sort of really good way to use it. Yeah, so this is, was the tension. Right, we're going to go on this and then we'll come back to tension. So that is a slow, that is really fast. Yeah, there you go. So I just want to go back up because I was right. So where my finger is, that is your tension wheel. So yeah, it will be located around that sort of area on your machine. So that is your tension for your top stitch. Top stitch being the thread that is on top of your machine, and being that you tend to use that to sew the top of your fabric basically. You will want to move that depending on what thread you use. So for your top stitch thread, you can use any type of thread, be it silk, linen, a thicker thread for an actual like denim top stitch. Oh, also I've just noticed, a little tangent, that this one I have that holder on top of the machine, so that's what I was talking about before as well. So yeah, so depending on the thread that you use, also depending on the cloth type and thickness of cloth, will depend what type of tension you want for your top stitch thread. Like I said before with the bobbing, if only you're always using also thread, then that would be fine. You should never have to really change that. But for your top stitch, you may want to sort of change it a fair amount because of the different threads that you use. Now, I always sort of like kind of go between different things of what I say to people, I think. And I believe that the smaller the number, the tighter it should get, and then the bigger the number, the looser it should get. But what I do always say to people is to do tests. So just move it like a little, sort of like half a point, half a number, because I don't really know what they're worked out on. Yeah, and then do a little test. Sew it a bit, see how it goes. Oh, sorry, got a yawn. And then if it's still loose, then move it a little bit more. Do it again. If it's still loose, or even looser, then go back then the other way and do it there. Because, like I said, different thread types and different cloth types will sort of what's the word? Affect it differently, basically. Oh, there we go. I do have another video on sewing straight lines as well, so check out that to understand more. So yeah, so this screen is, again, all digital machines will have a screen like that will show you the buttons that you've pressed, and the length and width that you want and things like that. There you go, the buttonholes are covered in the next video as well. I do have a varied number of videos already on the channel, so do check them out. And they, in the other videos, they are not currently voiced, so I will do more videos like this for them to get them voiced, but they all have the typed up worded instructions. Oh right, yeah, so then that is just the end wheel at the end that I was talking about before. So when you've got a thicker piece of cloth, it's really good to use that as well. There you go. So this is the jersey stitches that I was talking about. So you can see how stretchy that was. Excuse me whilst I figure out what I'm doing with that cloth. You put your foot down in whatever position you want, sew along. Now I believe this is just a straight stitch that I'm doing. It's so funny though watching yourself go back on these things, because it's just like, yeah, we get it, we get it. I don't really know what I'm trying to show there. Oh, maybe that was a zigzag. There we go. That was a zigzag. I didn't even notice the stitch going all over. So that's what I said. You'll see it like a ladder sort of going through, which is fine. It allows you to stretch it, but maybe not the best. Yeah, there we go. So now we're going to do that stitch. You just see how it kind of sort of takes a bit more time to take the fabric through. It's because it's doing them extra stitches. And there you go, a lovely straight seam. Oh, that's a good one to see actually. And then do I show it on the other side? There we go, yes. And then we can, oh, no, maybe not. I decided to change that. What am I doing here? But basically you were just seeing on the back side that it had that zigzag. Right, now this is then a straight stitch, so am I going to like do it so then it breaks? Yeah, there we go. Oh, so that's a straight stitch breaking, because the more you can sew a jersey or something stretchy with a straight stitch, and it will be okay, but it will want to, it will like after time sort of break. All right, here we go. So we should be able to see it better on this cloth, how them actually, those stitches actually look. So we don't have much of this video left, so at the end of this I will do any questions and a bit of chat until, yeah, maybe until sort of like 8:30, so about 30 minutes from now. Just realised my desk there is in a different position to where it is now. Right, there we go. So the first one was the zigzag. That was in a smaller zigzag, and then this is that stitch with the straight line and then the zigzag stitches. Let's just show that again. So you see it's got that straight edge and then it's got zigzags. Yeah, so I will ditto what I've written on the screen. Always take some cloth and yeah, sort of kind of have a go through your own machine. I'm just going to put my light on because it has actually gotten quite that's a bit better. Quite dark here. Yeah, to take some cloth and to what's my train of thought there, and practice sort of like going through your machine and sort of what those functions will do on your machine, because every machine has some different ones. So yeah, so just have a play, honestly. Like there's nothing like just sitting down and sort of just kind of having a play. It's, you don't have to make something the very first time that you do anything, so don't worry at all, give it a go. Now I don't have like a swoops thing, as some other commentators have, for like questions, so I'm going to do you know, just with my hands, questions. So that is the end of one, the start of a new part, and I'm just going to show this comment because it is very weird. Yes, Sophie, it's very, very weird to comment on my on my own videos, especially ones that I haven't like viewed in a long time. So the first video I had actually sort of edited not too long ago, and it's just taken me a while to sort of get on here and do it, because yeah, I'm a bit nervous with all this sort of stuff and very weirdly sort of self-aware, and kind of I try to get over it, but yeah, it's the whole thing, you know, sort of kind of talking in my room and kind of, you know, not sort of not having someone necessarily to talk to is, yeah, very weird, and then sort of when I kind of get videos that I haven't seen in a long time and trying to understand what I'm doing is a whole other part of it. So yeah, thank you very much. But yeah, I don't know if there are any other questions. Let me see what you were saying before, because I was trying to read this properly earlier. I need to have my grandma's fixed at some point. The other thread thingy, I'm guessing you're bobbing, has some issues and can't figure it out for the life of me. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, it could be. I had someone recently saying about there. So I would, for one, sort of, if you can at all, take the bed apart and get in there with like a little brush and just like brush out all the dust and see if that is any better. And also just by, like I say, sort of making sure that it's hooked through the top hook on the very top of your machine, the one that's linked to the needle. You'll be surprised how many issues you think you have with your bobbin, but it's actually just that it's come out from there. So do try that. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, sort of kind of getting a professional to look at it. The issues with my machine, my second one, that is broken. When it first went, I think I was just using it a lot during lockdown. So I had some personal things with a housemate that I won't go into now. But so for every day during lockdown, from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, I was out of the house and walked to my studio. I walked 30 minutes to my studio and would just do stuff there all day. Obviously, no one else was there. So, so I felt like, okay, sort of going there because no one else was going there. And and just was, sort of kind of, I decided to do some of these videos then. So I was going to start a YouTube channel back then, but then I had a lot of people telling me not to, because, sort of, you're going to spend all that time doing these videos and then you're not going to get any money for it, blah, blah. But actually, like, the more, and, sadly I listen to them, but the more that I teach in person, sort of like I get enough work that I have income from it. So kind of doing a bit extra outside of it, I don't mind, because it's what I love, like teaching people skills. So and I want to actually set up one of those buy me a coffee things. I need to look into it. Because it would be nice to get sort of like, just I was seeing how other people would like use that. It would be nice to have something like goals that people can sort of like pay into. And in particular, I do a thing where part of my business, because I'm a social enterprise, I have a pay it forward scheme. So I would like a way for people to pay into that. That then will allow other people that can't afford to have a class have a class. So then, sort of, if people kind of watch the stuff on here and really enjoy it, then they can sort of do that basically. So sort of, it'd be nice if people, so sort of like, let me know if they would be up for doing that. But I will set it up and then we'll kind of see from there basically. But I'm not one to ask for people to, sort of like kind of pay for me being on here, because I love it, and Sophie, if you are my only ever person that watches me live, then I'll be happy with that, because as long as someone keeps me company, I don't mind, and as long as I don't seem weird to you, like sort of voicing over my videos and things like that, then that's cool. As long as it's all helpful, then that's all I'm worried about. I have watched a lot of other YouTubers, particularly in sort of the sewing kind of area, and that's what started me doing my videos, because I could see a real gap in how people presented the videos and sort of like the different angles that maybe they didn't have, or the different steps that they didn't have. So my idea was to have long form videos that then people can always fast forward if they want. So that's all good. Show this one. So I tried everything, just doesn't seem to hook initially. to the top storage for some reason. I've needed that looked at. Yeah, that's really weird. I've not known that to happen. Yeah, it's a shame. But yeah, hopefully you can find someone to look at that. I know you're not in the UK, but yeah, sort of there are kind of people about that will, you know, obviously specialise in that sort of thing. It's just yeah, kind of like sort of with anything really, just sort of like give them a go and see how they sort of do with what they say about your machine really. And for something like that, I was sort of, they always say like go to at least 3 people to get quotes. So yeah, so I would suggest that. Yeah, and that's, yeah, so hopefully then that gets sorted. I will actually say something interesting on that kind of fact that sort of I always get people asking me about appointments and things like that, often wanting prices, like my prices before they come to me, because I do alterations and repairs alongside the classes, and I have a team behind me who help with all the alterations. But in particular with the alterations, I have all my prices on my website because I like to be open about that sort of thing. So it always kind of like makes me laugh when people ask me for the prices, because I'm like, it's right there. But I understand that sort of some things they don't understand, like the wording of certain alterations. So yes, I had this girl, someone female, I presume, because of the name, asked me about trouser hem, and then said, you know, sort of, could I get it done literally in like a day turnaround, and therefore what would the price be? Now I don't often sort of kind of, you know, kind of add on more for express, so you know, so I didn't. But you know, it's a female trouser, so they often need a bit more of a delicate touch sometimes than what a men's does. And in particular, we also hand hem, because I don't have a machine to do that, and I don't actually charge any extra for it being hand hemmed, because it actually takes quite a bit longer. And I, you know, like, because I'm not like a fast hand sewer, so I often take that sort of stuff home if I have time to, and then we'll like sew it whilst I'm watching SBTV or LawTube or something. So but yeah, so you know, she wanted it done in one day. I was like, yeah, I can fit you in tomorrow morning with one of the girls. And she's like, you know, so what cost? And I was like, well, it'd be from £20, depending on like the width. And yeah, and she's like, oh no, that's more than what the trouser cost. More than what the trouser cost. Now I've heard those words. I always talk about people saying, using those words. I haven't heard those words since kind of before lockdown, really, because I've been getting far less people like buying stuff new. There's always like stuff out of their wardrobes, which I absolutely love. And yeah, so like for her to say that, oh my god, I drafted out this email back to her so many times being like, you wanna fund fast fashion, you know, you can go and fund slavery and all this sort of stuff, because unfortunately a lot of, well, not a lot, but you know, if you go to a drag cleaners often, it will be a similar setup to what some of the nail bars are like, in that they are kind of human trafficked, in that it could be that, you know, so I will tell a story that I got offered one once. I got offered a little space in this dry cleaners, and they were like, we get on average £200 worth of alterations a week, and we will charge you £150 a week for the space. So I wrote back and I was like, oh my God, you're so generous, offering me work and a place to work from. And then at the end of it, I earn £50 a week. £50 a week, £200 a month. Like, that's not, you know. I was like, and literally, I never heard from them again. You know, it was like sort of the perfect kind of sarcasm that they got, clearly. But there was half of me that was like, oh, what if they actually think that I am actually taking them out for this? But yeah, thankfully they understood. So yeah, so you know, sort of like, and unfortunately, that's a lot of that. What happens in that sector is it will be, you know, sort of they could have their passports kind of taken away, put somewhere safe, but you know they can't get access to it freely. They are paid pittance, like I say, you know, £50 a week, if that. So that is why when you go to the dry cleaners, it will be a cheaper price because they're trying to get more through the door because they think that they have to do a cheaper price to get more through the door. When actually I am the total opposite. I cost up depending how long it will take. There are some bits that are like sort of loss leaders, like I say, these sort of trouser hems, but then other bits, you know, where it doesn't take that much time, but then I sort of can charge a bit more because of what the alteration is, just for sort of balancing out for us. I pay all my staff a living wage. I pay them per item, and they get 65% of that cost. And yeah, and then like the rest of that money just goes into like the haberdashery. I don't take money from it. That's why I teach. That's the money that I get. And then yeah, so then it's on them sort of like the more that they sort of do, then they will sort of obviously earn more. But you know, like a pair of trousers at sort of like £18-20, they're getting a good sort of like kind of £12 an hour from that, you know, sort of, if not more, because generally sort of a pair of trousers should only take like half an hour to do a hem. So you know, so then they can like get even more. But yeah, so I sort of eventually toned down my email and was just like, you know, we're ethical tailors. What we sort of charge is kind of what it costs to do, and how you know, sort of it isn't about I always tell people in that situation, it's not about the initial cost of what you spent on that garment. It's about the longevity of wear that you get out of that garment after us having altered it. You know, I don't like to alter them. They're just for one use. Obviously, I will do it. I do wedding dresses. But where I can, I will leave extra material inside so then it can be taken back out. Obviously, you can't always do that. But yeah, so that's just sort of yeah, one little thing about kind of all these yeah, kind of sort of industries kind of yeah, can kind of be sort of intertwined, you know, sort of like nail bars and sort of dry cleaners and things, you know, sort of just be aware of sort of the environment that you're going into. Again, like with my sort of, when customers come into my studio, it's very open. I like to be very open with everything that we're doing, with, you know, sort of money coming in and out, just because it's so rare to find that in businesses. So it's just yeah, sort of understand how, what's, you know, like the people working there, sort of like what they're like and that, you know, do they look happy and everything. Oh, nice, Sophie. Yeah, I'm like, I'm so slow. Like, once I do it like a few times, then I can be sort of faster. But yeah, it's very hard. Oh yeah, poor stitching. Yeah, sorry, that's what I was going to go on to with the dry cleaner thing. So yeah, so you'll go in there, and then and it will often be a half-hearted job. And I don't put that on them tailors at all. They're very, very talented. They're just under such, sort of like stress of trying to get things done for a cheap price and at a really, like fast pace. Um, Even though, they'll kind of like sort of work for like hours and hours, but they just want to get like so many things through the door. So yeah, so it's just like really, really hard. Um, Yeah, exactly. Always a cheap ones are so bad. Um, yeah, Sophie says some think it's supposed to be cheap labour and don't care how. Exactly, it's sort of, and I just think, sort of, I always put it on people of would they, sort of like, would you want to be paid below a living wage? Sort of, would you be happy doing that kind of work? And they always kind of look at me, and they're, with this kind of look of, well, but we're not talking about me. And it's just like, but sort of, don't you see how it relates in the same way? um yeah, it's very hard to sort of get people sort of to find it, have it relatable to people. That's what I find, especially like where I am. I'm based in Canning Town. So, like you're talking to a lot of people in like the city that are sort of bankers and whatever, even some influencers around there, to be honest, and they just don't have that mindset, unfortunately. I paid the price of shoes because the only problem was the sole, and the good sole is where, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I will get I have so many shoes that like I've only just gotten rid of because they were literally like falling apart, sort of like down the sides of my feet. Um, and but like some of them like still had like half new soles on or heels on and things like that. But I just like looked at them and like, it's like ridiculous how I need to start getting rid of some bits. But yeah, I will like resole shoes until the end of time. It's sort of, once you find something that like fits so well. Actually, I had someone not too long ago coming, and he had some jeans, and literally they were like falling apart around the crotch and things. I think he must like wear them cycling or something. But he's like, he can't find any that fit in sort of like the same way, so he just like wants them repaired the whole time. So I was like, no, that's fine. I did sort of suggest us remaking them, but he's not going back to us yet. So it's sort of, I can't force people to get things remade, because obviously it is a high price in the high street. But there is that sort of kind of point that like you have to get to when you're like, right, sort of like this is like the last repair kind of thing, and then I need to sort of do something else really. That's what I like about men's pads. Yes, they're supposed to last, and that affects the quality in a good way. Absolutely, yes. Men's clothing is of like a whole different standard. Even like sort of fast fashion in some way for menswear. Just like the cloth that's used is actually quite fairly decent cloth a lot of the time. And until about past 5 years, it started happening. I will say that when I was at Selfridges, I noticed it, and then it's like the past sort of 3 years, it's even worse now. Seam allowance. So menswear would always have a nice chunky bit of seam allowance. This is like the goodness. A nice chunky amount of seam allowance on the inside, so then you can let it out. If in women's wear, oh my god, you get like the smidging. But now in menswear, they're taking it down. Like the inside leg, oh, like you hardly get anything now, and it's all to save that smidging of cost. When, you know, sort of, what are they doing? You know, like what they really getting from that seam allowance, other than that they're not adding it onto, like they can sort of, so any scraps from like clothing that they've made, they can like write off in fast fashion, like any sort of big business, they can kind of write that off as like a it's not being used kind of thing. So when like they'll send it to landfill or whatever, and obviously they're being cracked down on that now, but that's what they will do. And nothing will be done with it, nothing useful will be made of it. They just cut it off the garment, and then they don't, you know, they don't take any more off the price, they just take that extra cost for themselves as ever. And yeah, and then people come to me and they're like, oh, it's just a bit too big, can you let it out? No, unfortunately. And actually it's really interesting, because lately I've had some women's wear that actually has had a fair bit, a nice amount in the seam. Still, you know, they're not like masses, but more than what you sometimes see on women's wear, which is like really interesting. Oh gosh, Sophie, got a size 8. I only throw shoes out if I absolutely have to. Oh my gosh, yeah, my sister is like 7.5, maybe 8, I think. She's like a lot taller than me. Yeah, so yeah, I totally get that. Like in particular, like with women's shoes as well, because you get that sort of fine line. I used to work in shoe shop when, like, my very first job out of school was in a shoe shop. We had the like 8s round to 11s, maybe even 12s size shoes, and you would find the men down there that want to wear the women's shoes. No, you know, no shade on that. It's just, you know, obviously back then it was like early 2000s. It's very interesting for me, 16-year-old, to sort of see that. But it's always kind of stuck in me that there is a certain style in that size. I know size 8 is a bit better with more styles, but you know, the higher you go up, there's only a certain style that you get. So I really feel for women that are bigger footed, because, you know, we don't want to be wearing that type of shoe all the time. You know, it's usually a heel and a sort of glitzy glam kind of style, you know, which obviously we don't want to wear. Yeah, which is like just such a shame. I've got really wide feet, so I sort of have a hard time sometimes finding shoes, or, you know, I used to really squeeze my feet into shoes. Now that I work for myself and I can wear what I want, I don't do that anymore. But yeah, there was a time when I was doing that. Not the best. Yeah, I was going to say, pay more for worse quality in women's wear. What is this about? Yeah, I worked in Dax for a small time, which is a British heritage tailoring store, which is now owned by Japanese. And it's like shocking, just like I'd never noticed it before, because when I worked in stores, like the women, it would be like a women's top shop, say. So I worked in women's top shop, you know, like men's top man. And they're like very separate, so like you wouldn't really notice like the pricing difference. Oh my god, in Dax, it's like it was all in the same thing, and it was, yeah, out there just how like different the price was for, yeah, like exactly the same thing, you know, like a women's suit versus like a men's suit, you know. It's sort of, Yeah, it's just shocking. And then the cloth quality was just hideous. So but saying that, like I still have like my DAC suits that I had to buy because I had to get a uniform. But and you know, and they are very good, and I do look after my stuff so they last. But like when like you see like the men's, like it was so rare to get like a really nice quality women's wear piece. Basically, I have 3 suits that are absolutely gorgeous, but I also have a dress that is polyester, you know, and it's not the best, but I do love it as a dress. But it's just, yeah, just that sort of real kind of juxtaposition between the two things. And I often kind of sort of go through this. This is when I sort of get my like culty fashion vibes. I wonder if it's something to do with sort of patriarchy and kind of that women don't deserve any better, or whether it's just the fact that women don't put up a fight. Also, how women tend to shop more or buy more clothes. You know, and we've not sort of ever said anything about the quality of clothes. So if we keep buying as we are and not making an issue about it, then you know, like why should they change it? It's for us to, you know, anyone individually to demand more, basically. And yeah, so and that's it. And sort of, you know, and kind of cost, you know, just sort of kind of shop around really, and not in the, you know, sort of, obviously I'm against kind of fast fashion and sort of the way kind of sort of a lot of like the garment workers and things like that are sort of treated in terms of pay and everything. But you know, sort of if you're gonna you know, sort of just kind of like sort of like think of like where you're shopping from and what the quality of clothing is compared to the price. You know, like even like when I, back in the day, like when I used to like shop in Primark a little bit, I'd still go around and, you know, check all like the seams and sort of make sure that it wasn't going to come apart, you know. So it doesn't matter sort of where you're shopping, you can always check for things like that. So yeah. And I've got length 34. And even sewers don't recognise it's a men's pant. Ah, very good. Yeah, on the men's trousers versus women's. So why would you go to exactly? You know, like you can totally get men's trousers and get them tailored to you. You know, the only difference between men's and women's trousers in terms of cut is the hip area. But you know, sort of you get a trouser that fits around the waist and the hips and everything. And you know, and then you can, you know, sort of say like if it fits around your hips, but then you just want it nipped in for the waist, then do that, you know, sort of, and all that kind of around the leg and everything, you know, you can just get that all tailored, you know, and then once it's sort of that perfect shape for you, then you know, then you just wear it forever, basically. The best way. But yeah, so I think we might kind of wrap that up unless you've got any other questions. Sophie, because you're the only one here with me, thank you. But yeah, otherwise I will go and I think get myself some ice cream before the evening show, because we've got about well, like an hour and a half ish, but I know Chad always likes to start a bit early, so I'm going to try and get in there early for once. Now that I'm all sort of like pre-set up, I quite like sort of doing this sort of double show. We'll see how I feel by the end of the night. But yeah, so I hope that was all good. And yeah, and I will see you on the next one. I'm going to try and sort of do a few over this week, because I know it's been quite a while since I've done work. So I went on holiday, and then like last week was just like a crazy week, and I wasn't sleeping very well, so I was trying to get early nights. But yeah, so oh sorry. Yeah, so then I'm going to sort of plan some kind of other videos for the rest of this week. That will mostly be sort of my like art of alteration alongs, and yeah, so that's cool. Fabulous. See you later. Bye.